The winter of 1946 had arrived with a cruel and unrelenting cold. In the small village of Kamenka, the earth lay frozen beneath a thin, brittle layer of snow. Families huddled together in their modest homes, desperately trying to keep the cold from seeping into their bones. Food was scarce, ration cards provided barely enough to survive, and many children went to bed hungry each night. People whispered about the city, about distant markets overflowing with food, yet for the villagers, such places seemed like tales from another world. Maria, a widow with 2 young sons, spent her days walking through the snow, searching for scraps of bread or potatoes that could stretch their meager meals. Each day, she faced the same harsh reality. Hunger was no respecter of age or circumstance. Her neighbors spoke of the old days, of harvests that were once plentiful, yet those memories only deepened the ache in their stomachs. Life had become a silent struggle, where the most precious resource was not money or possessions, but the ability to find something, anything, to eat. Even the simplest joys were overshadowed by the constant gnawing of emptiness. Children played quietly, their laughter restrained by the weight of fatigue and hunger. Maria often found herself staring into the dark corners of her home, wondering how she would protect her sons from the harsh truths of the world. In the evenings, the village gathered in small clusters, sharing what little they had, swapping stories and offering comfort. Each tale of hardship was met with nods of understanding. Each small triumph, a loaf of bread found or a neighbor helped, was celebrated quietly, like a flickering candle against the night. Hunger had reshaped every aspect of their lives. Yet amidst despair, the bonds between people had grown stronger, resilient in the face of relentless hardship. Spring approached slowly, yet it brought little relief. The snow melted into muddy fields, revealing cracked earth that had been stripped bare by the harsh winter. Farmers returned to their lands, but the soil offered only a meager promise of life, as seeds had been scarce and the frost had claimed much of the remaining stores. Maria ventured into the fields with her sons, hoping to find wild greens or roots hidden beneath the soil, but the earth seemed unwilling to give even the smallest sustenance. The village markets, once lively and filled with color, were now quiet, the stalls nearly empty. Rumors spread of distant aid convoys, yet none reached Kamenka, leaving its residents to rely on each other in ways they never had before. Hunger had changed them. Simple gestures of sharing bread, a potato, or a bit of sugar became acts of profound generosity, a silent acknowledgement of suffering shared. Maria noticed her sons growing thinner, their faces pale and eyes wide with both curiosity and fear. Every day became a delicate balancing act, rationing their tiny portions while trying to keep hope alive. She remembered stories her own mother had told her about past famines, how families had survived through sheer will and cooperation, and she clung to those memories as if they were lifelines. The children learned to be quiet, to move slowly through the house and fields so as not to waste energy. Yet, amidst the struggle, there were moments of fleeting beauty, a patch of wildflowers pushing through the mud, a bird's song breaking the silence, or the shared warmth of neighbors huddled together on a cold night. These small fragments of hope reminded them that life, fragile though it was, continued to persist, even in the shadow of hunger. By summer, the village had learned to adapt in ways both resourceful and heartbreaking. Gardens were planted wherever the soil allowed, tiny plots behind homes, along fences, even in cracks in the worn pathways. People scavenged riverbanks for edible plants, fished with makeshift rods, and traded anything of value they still possessed. Maria's days were filled with endless work, but her sons began to show signs of resilience, their small hands learning the rhythm of planting and gathering, their eyes brightening with every new sprout that defied the harsh conditions. Yet the shadow of hunger never fully lifted. Even a small meal was a precious victory, celebrated quietly around the flickering glow of a wood stove. Stories of distant relatives, some who had fled to cities in search of food, circulated, bringing both hope and despair, for the roads were long, dangerous, and uncertain. In the evenings, the village gathered once more, but the conversations were different now. They spoke not just of survival, but of endurance and the strength found in unity. Maria listened as older villagers recounted memories of past famines, of how they had survived with courage and solidarity. These stories became lessons, guiding the younger generation on how to share, how to conserve, and how to hope without giving in to despair. Even in the face of scarcity, small acts of kindness created a web of support, binding the community together. Maria often found herself marveling at the quiet bravery of her neighbors, fishermen who gave up their catch, women who saved portions of soup for children, and children who learned to share their small joys despite their hunger. In those moments, the village seemed alive not just with struggle, but with a profound, unspoken determination to endure. Autumn brought a fragile sense of hope, though the fields offered only a partial bounty. The crops had survived, but barely enough to fill the stomachs of the villagers. Maria walked through the village each morning, carrying baskets of whatever she could gather, potatoes, wild carrots, and the occasional apple from a tree stubbornly holding onto its fruit. Her sons helped eagerly, their small hands learning the value of each morsel. Hunger remained a constant companion, whispering at the edges of their lives, reminding them that tomorrow's survival was never guaranteed. Yet, the bonds within the village had grown stronger. Neighbors exchanged what little they had, offered shelter for those in need, and shared stories by firelight that gave warmth beyond the body. One evening, Maria sat with her sons and neighbors around a small, sputtering stove. They shared a modest meal, and the conversation drifted to memories of better times, of festivals and laughter that once filled Kamenka's streets. These stories became more than nostalgia. They were reminders of resilience and identity, a proof that life continued even when hunger threatened to strip it away. Maria realized that survival was not only about food, but about preserving the spirit of the community, the unspoken courage that held them together. Children played quietly nearby, their laughter mingling with the crackle of the fire, a fragile but precious sound in a world dominated by scarcity. And as night fell, Maria looked at the faces around her, pale but determined, and understood that hunger could bend them, but it could not break the heart of a village united in hope. Winter returned, but this time it felt different. The villagers had learned lessons carved deeply into their hearts by months of hunger and struggle. They faced the frost with a quiet strength, carrying forward the resilience that had been forged through scarcity. Maria's sons had grown, not only taller but wiser, their small hands now steady and capable, their eyes reflecting a determination that mirrored the community around them. Families still worried about each day, but there was a sense of hope that had not existed in the bitter months before. Meals remained modest, but the villagers had learned to share and stretch each portion, turning scarcity into a reason to come together rather than drift apart. The village square, once silent and desolate, now hosted small gatherings. Neighbors exchanged stories, seeds, and small comforts. Children ran through the streets, their laughter rising above the howling wind, proof that life could flourish even after deprivation. Maria often stood at the edge of her garden, watching sprouts push through frozen soil, a symbol that even the hardest winters would eventually give way to growth. Hunger had left scars, both on bodies and hearts, but it had also brought lessons in courage, generosity, and unity. The village endured, bound by shared suffering and the quiet triumph of survival. In the end, Maria understood that though hunger had tested them, it could not extinguish the human spirit, and Kamenka, small and battered, had survived not just with food, but with hope, love, and the strength of community.